Okay, so you've pointed us towards Eckhart Tolle, specifically The Power of Now. A lot of listeners are familiar, I think.
Definitely. It's one of those foundational texts for many people exploring this area.
Right. And our mission here really is to dig into the core ideas. We want to pull out the most practical stuff, how to actually use these concepts for finding peace, dealing with life right
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Because concepts like the mind, presence, time, they can sound a bit abstract. We need to make them tangible.
Let's do it. Where do we even start with Tolle? His own story seems pretty central.
It really is. He talks very openly about hitting rock bottom, intense anxiety, depression, really dark thoughts.
Yeah, that I can't live with myself any longer line is striking.
It is. And the key thing was what happened next. He suddenly became aware of two selves in that thought. There was the I, and then the self that the I couldn't live with, a separation.
Okay, hold on. That's a profound moment. What's the
Yeah.
big takeaway from that split, that realization?
It's the absolute core of his teaching. You are not your mind. That voice in your head, the constant stream of thinking, judging, worrying, that's not you.
Okay.
He argues that identifying with that stream, believing it is you, is the main obstacle to enlightenment. It creates this false mind-made self.
A false self built out of
Yeah,
thoughts.
and inherently full of fear and suffering because thoughts are often negative, critical, or anxious. It's like
Yeah.
constant background static interfering with the real signal.
So if we're not the thoughts, the mental chatter, what are we? And how does this thinking actually cause
Well,
problems?
Tolle says this identification, this believing we are our thoughts, creates like an opaque screen.
A screen
A screen made of all our concepts, labels, judgments, opinions, just words, words, words. And this screen blocks us
blocks us from what?
from directly connecting with ourselves, with other people, and crucially with the present moment. It creates this feeling of being separate, isolated units.
That feeling of separation. Yeah, I think everyone knows that feeling. So how do we start, tearing down that screen? Or at least making it less opaque?
The first step, Tully says, is simple, but not necessarily easy. It's just to observe the thoughts.
Observe them, like watch them go by.
Kind of, but without judging them, just noticing, there's that worry again, or there's that planning thought, recognizing the voice in the head and realizing, here I am, listening to it.
Okay, so there's the thought, and there's me, the watcher.
Precisely. That's the key. The act of witnessing. You realize the I am that's observing isn't the thought itself. It comes from somewhere deeper, quieter, beyond the mind's noise.
Right, right. So simply by watching, we create a little distance. What happens in that distance, that space?
As you practice just watching, without getting pulled into the stories the thoughts are telling,
Mm,
they start to lose their grip.
they have less power.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because you're not feeding them with your belief and attention. And then Tolle says you start to notice these gaps. Yeah, gaps of no mind. Little moments where the thinking just stops or pauses. Might just be a second or two at first.
Hmm. Those moments of quiet between thoughts. What's the significance there? Is it just blankness?
No, not blankness. It's the beginning of experiencing your true nature, he'd say. That
Ah.
connection, that oneness with what he calls being. It's usually hidden behind all the mental noise.
And what does that feel like?
Stillness, a deep sense of peace, sometimes even a subtle joy, what he calls the joy of being. It's not just empty space, it's full. It's where real insight can bubble up.
Okay, so the mind, or our identification with it, is a big source of trouble. Let's pivot to maybe his most famous idea, the power of now. What is the now, according to Tully?
It's simple but radical. The now, the present moment, is the only thing that's truly real. That's it.
The only thing. What about the past and future? They feel pretty real sometimes.
They feel real, sure, but Tolle argues they only exist as mental constructs. The past is just memory trace in the now. The future is just projection, anticipation, also happening in the now. He has that great quote, "Life is now. There was never a time when your life was not now, nor will there ever be. It's always this moment."
Wow. Okay, if only the present is real, what does that mean for our problems, our
Well,
suffering?
it means they can't actually survive in the now or te. Think about it. A problem needs time.
Mm.
You're either regretting something past or worrying about something future.
Right.
When your full attention, your full presence is right here, right now. The mental energy that feeds the problem, the suffering, it just dissolves. There's no room for it.
But we spend so much time thinking about the past or planning the future. Why is that such an issue for Tolle?
He calls this psychological time. It stems directly from identifying with the mind. It's this Obsessive preoccupation with past and future that blinds us to the only time there is now.
And how does that show up, like, in everyday
Oh,
life?
loads of ways. Always feeling you need to get somewhere else. Believing happiness is just around the corner when you achieve X or get Y. Thinking possessions will fulfill you. Waiting for someone else to make your life meaningful. It's always later, never now.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting, like constantly chasing something. You mentioned he calls it the insanities of psychological time. That's strong language.
It is strong, yeah.
Yeah.
He sees it as fundamentally dysfunctional because it disconnects us from life itself. On a bigger scale, think about ideologies that sacrifice millions now for some imagined perfect future. That's psychological time run rampant.
Okay, I see the danger. So how do we escape this insanity? How do we actually find that peace he talks about in the now?
It starts by noticing that pattern of striving away from the now and consciously choosing to drop it,
Yeah.
even for a moment.
Just stop trying to escape the present.
Yeah. Real joy, real peace isn't out there in the future. It's found by discovering, as he puts it, the life underneath your life situation, the presence, the being that's always here.
And being present, that also shifts how we approach goals, challenges, failure even.
Completely. If your sense of self isn't tied up in the mind's judgments of success or failure, but rooted in being, in the now, you're free.
Free from what?
Free from that desperate attachment to outcomes. Free from the fear of failure defining you. You can still act, pursue goals, but without that underlying anxiety driving everything. Your worth isn't on the line.
Okay, let's talk about something else he introduces, the pain body. Sounds a bit ominous. What is it?
Yeah, it does sound heavy. Basically, the pain body is the accumulated residue of past emotional pain, stuff that wasn't fully faced, processed, and let go of.
So, like old hurts, anger, sadness, all bundled up.
Exactly. It forms this kind of negative energy field, almost
Yeah.
like an entity lodged in our body and psyche.
How does it affect us? Does it just sit there?
Oh, no, it doesn't just sit there. It tends to be dormant sometimes, but then it gets activated, often by something happening now that vaguely reminds it of the past pain.
And when it's active?
It tries to take you over. It wants to identify with you, make you feel those old emotions intensely, generate more negative thinking. Basically, it feeds on negativity and suffering.
Like getting hijacked by old emotions.
Precisely. Ever have those times you feel suddenly disproportionately angry or miserable and you don't even really know why? That could be the pain body waking up and looking for food.
Okay, yeah. So how do we deal with this pain body? Can we get rid of it?
Tolle says you don't fight it. The pain body thrives on unconsciousness. It loves when you don't notice it.
Yeah.
Its power is in that identification, when you believe you are that anger, that sadness.
So awareness is the key again.
Yes.
Yeah.
The moment you bring conscious awareness to it, just observing the feeling in your body, the emotion, without judging it, without getting lost in the thoughts about it, that's presence. And in that presence, the identification is broken.
It can't pretend to be you anymore.
Right. It loses its power source. It's like you used the darkness and light analogy earlier.
Yeah.
You can't fight darkness. You just bring in the light. The light of your conscious attention, your presence, starts to dissolve the pain body. Just watching it, allowing it to be there without resistance, begins to transmute it.
Allowing it. That leads into acceptance, which we'll get to. But first, let's connect ego and fear. How does Tolle link those?
He argues that fundamentally, fear is the ego's fear, specifically the fear of death, of annihilation.
The ego is afraid of dying.
Yes, because the ego is the mind-identified self. It's built on thoughts, concepts, separation. Annihilation is its ultimate terror. And when we're identified with that ego mind, that fear underlies so much of our behavior.
Even things that don't seem like fear of death.
Absolutely. Think about needing to be right in an argument. Why the intensity? Because if your mental position, your ego's position, is defeated, the ego feels diminished, threatened, a kind of mini-death.
Wow. Okay, so disidentifying from the mind, becoming more present, that should reduce fear.
That's the idea. When you're not clinging to the mind for your sense of self, whether you're right or wrong in some debate becomes, well, less important.
Less ego investment.
Exactly. The need to aggressively defend your viewpoint fades. You can state things clearly, but without that defensive edge, because your core sense of self comes from being, not from the mind's opinions.
This disidentification seems crucial. Which brings us to the portals to presence he talks about. Ways to actually get to that state of presence, right?
Yeah, practical ways to shift from mind identification into connecting with being.
What are some of the main ones?
The body is a huge one.
Yeah.
Primary portal. He encourages us to consciously inhabit the body.
Inhabit the body. What does that mean
Really?
practically? Like, pay attention to it.
Yeah, but more deeply. Shifting attention away from the constant thinking and into the feeling of the body from the inside. Feeling the life energy in your hands, your feet, your whole inner space.
So less thinking, more sensing.
Exactly. Feeling the aliveness within. That immediately grounds you in the live. Conscious breathing is another key part of this. Just feeling the breath move in and out anchors you right here.
Okay, the body, the breath, any other portals?
Silence is another big one. And space,
Silence and space? Like quiet rooms and empty spaces?
both outer and inner. External silence can help, sure, but also cultivating inner silence, that space between thoughts we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Tolle says silence isn't just nothingness, it's the gateway to the unmanifested, the source of being.
The source.
Yeah. And same with space, the physical space around us, but also inner spaciousness. Recognizing that space isn't empty, it's fundamental. These things take us beyond the mind's limitations. He even mentions conscious death as an involuntary portal, but the others are more accessible day to day.
Let's shift to relationships. How does presence change how we relate to others? Toll seems to think most relationships are flawed.
Well, yeah, he suggests that until we access presence within ourselves, our relationships are inevitably going to be shaped by the ego, which often means drama, conflict, those love-hate dynamics.
Sounds familiar.
Right. But he also sees relationships as a potentially powerful spiritual practice
Oh.
if we approach them consciously. Expressing feelings without blaming the other person. Really listening without the mind constantly judging or preparing a rebuttal. Giving each other space physically and mentally.
So relationships become a training ground for presence.
They absolutely can be. They act like mirrors, showing us our own unconscious patterns, our triggers. But the goal isn't necessarily constant bliss driven by the other person.
No. Isn't that what people want?
The ego wants that, yeah. But Tolle says if you're looking to the relationship to complete you or provide constant happiness, you'll probably be disappointed. True love, he says, is actually a state of being within you. It arises from realizing our interconnectedness, not from depending on someone else.
That makes sense. But what if you're trying to be present and your partner isn't? They're still caught up in the ego games. That must be tough.
Oh, definitely. Tolle acknowledges that's a real challenge. The ego thrives on conflict and problems, so a partner still identify with their mind might actually feel threatened by your growing presence. They might try to pull you back into drama.
So what do you do?
The key is maintaining your own presence, not getting sucked back into unconscious reactions. Your non-reactive presence can itself be a powerful, though subtle influence for change. But you can't force it.
Okay. Let's talk surrender and acceptance. These words pop up a lot. What's Tulle's specific take?
For him, surrender is about accepting the present moment completely, whatever it contains. It means dropping inner resistance to what is.
Dropping resistance. Does that mean just giving up? Being passive?
Not at all. He's very clear. It's not weakness or resignation. It's actually a source of immense spiritual power. Because all our unhappiness, our inner pain, comes from resisting what is already the case.
So accepting even difficult moments. That's the path to peace.
Internally, yes. By surrendering to the reality of the counting. Now, you stop fighting it inside yourself. This actually frees up energy. It doesn't mean you can't take action to change the situation externally if needed, but you act from a place of inner alignment, not resistance.
So acceptance allows for more effective action.
Often, yes. And he also links this to prosperity, saying true prosperity is simply gratitude for the present moment, for what you already have right now.
That connects to negativity. We all deal with it. How does Tolle suggest we handle negative feelings?
He sees all inner resistance, basically, as showing up as some form of negativity. Anger, irritation, anxiety, resentment. It's all resistance.
And he thinks negativity is unnatural.
Yeah, he calls it a psychic pollutant. It obscures our true nature, which is peace.
Yeah.
But the useful thing is, he suggests using negative emotions as signals.
Signals, like alarm bells.
Kind of, like a reminder to become more present. When you feel that negativity bubbling up, instead of getting lost in the story behind it, she shouldn't have said that, or trying to push it down.
You use it as a prompt.
Exactly. Use it as a prompt to bring your attention fully into the now. Feel your breath. Feel the sensations in your body. That presence starts to dissolve the negativity naturally. He also talks about becoming transparent to triggers.
Transparent.
Yeah, like letting external negativity pass through you without sticking, without creating a reaction, just allowing it, which is really the essence of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Okay, lastly, let's touch on compassion and this idea of a new order of reality.
Right. Compassion, for Tolle, isn't just pity or sympathy. It's a deep awareness of our shared bond with all beings.
Shared bond, how so?
Recognizing that on the level of form, our bodies, our life stories, we all share birth, life, suffering, death, mortality. But on the deeper level, the level of being, we share eternal life, that underlying consciousness.
So compassion comes from seeing both the shared humanity and the shared divinity.
You can put it that way, yeah. He says true compassion arises when the sadness you might feel for suffering merges with the underlying joy and peace of being. It's a recognition of both levels simultaneously.
And the new order of reality he talks about, a new world.
He suggests that the world we see now, with all its conflict, dysfunction, environmental destruction, is largely a reflection of the collective human ego, the mind running rampant.
Based on fear and separation.
Exactly. So he envisions that as more individuals shift consciousness, move from mind identification to presence, that will inevitably create ripples. It will lead to a different kind of world.
A world based more on presence and compassion.
That's the potential. A new earth, he sometimes calls it. He emphasizes that real change starts at the level of being, the level of cause. Actions taken from that place, effect, will naturally be more aligned, more constructive.
So it really boils down to this internal shift, doesn't it? Moving from being lost in thought to being grounded in the present.
That's the heart of it, yeah. Recognizing you're not just the voice in your head, embracing the now through presence and acceptance. That's where Tolle says true peace and freedom lie. Not out there somewhere, but right here.
It's profound stuff, and definitely, like you said, requires practice, ongoing reflection, not just intellectual understanding.
Absolutely. It's an experiential path.
Well, thank you for breaking down these core ideas for us. It's incredibly helpful, and maybe for everyone listening, a thought to take away. Think about one area in your life where you really get caught in that psychological time, maybe worrying constantly about the future or replaying past events over and over. Just notice that. And then maybe ask yourself gently, what would it feel like to bring your full awareness just for a moment right into the present within that situation? How might that shift things? Something to explore, perhaps after revisiting Tolle's work with these ideas in mind.